Hi everyone. Again, welcome to this taster session for our Executive MBA program on our Innovation for Impact module. My name is Lucky Singh and I'm the Client Relationship Manager here at King's Business School, and I oversee the recruitment side of things for our Executive MBA program. Joining me today is my colleague, Dr. Elisa Alt, who is a lecturer in entrepreneurship and leads the Innovation for Impact module within the Executive MBA program. I'm going to hand over to Elisa now to take you through the taster session. If you have any questions, do pop it into the Q&A box and then we'll answer those in a little while. But without further ado, over to you, Elisa.
Thank you, Lucky. Right, so welcome everyone. I'm really glad to be here today sharing with you a little bit of how this module will be, a little bit of the content that we will cover. This module is based on my research in the area of innovation for impact, social entrepreneurship, corporate social entrepreneurship. So I will be talking about all these topics today in this session with you. But to get started, since the title of the module is Innovation for Impact, I'd like to start by discussing what is impact. So there is a model which is widely used by organizations that pursue social impact projects, which is the logic model of social impact, was devised by USAID. And with this model, we think of impact as the result of a long chain, which starts with the inputs of organizations and people working inside existing organizations, the activities that these organizations and these innovators are doing inside organizations. And then the first results we see from these inputs and activities are the short-term outputs, right? These are the more immediate things that we see. Then we have the medium-term effects of these inputs and activities. And finally, we have impact, which is the more long-term effects of those inputs and activities. So impact, first of all, takes time. It's something that we do not see as an immediate result of actions that we take. So I have some examples to share with you, starting with a positive example that is based on the work of a very well-known social entrepreneur, Dr. Miriam Sidibe, who worked for 15 years at Unilever. She's a public health expert, and she led essentially a public health campaign inside Unilever with the Lifebuoy soap. So she devised a number of activities inside Unilever with others. So she was leading, of course, this inside the organization, but with the help of many people. The main activities of this public health campaign that she designed were around public-private partnerships. And a very short-term output of this initiative was the Global Hand Washing Day, which was endorsed by the United Nations and has become a worldwide event, very successful in promoting awareness for hand washing. The more medium-term outcomes of that initiative, she was able to reach with this campaign 1 billion people that changed their hand washing behavior. They were able to track how many people they impacted with this campaign. And finally, the long-term impact was contributing to reducing child mortality. So they focused on this campaign on children under the age of 5 years old. And hand washing really helped reduce infections for simple diseases like diarrhea and also pneumonia. So that was the long-term impact of that initiative, reducing child mortality. But of course, the actions of organizations can also have a negative impact. So a very well-known example of negative impact. So if we think of the drug OxyContin that was developed by Purdue Pharma, and of course there were many other opioids developed by other pharma companies. some of the key activities that these pharma companies were involved in were around really promoting the reduction of pain, right, with very aggressive marketing. And the short-term outputs were people were really happy because they were alleviating their pain. But then in the medium term, they became addicted to the drug, and the long-term societal impact of that was what we know as the opioid crisis in America, which is still ongoing and still causing deaths to this day. So, of course, in this module, we want to be aware that the actions that we take can have a negative impact, but we want to focus on positive social change. We want to focus on how can we innovate for positive impact, for positive social change. And before we talk more about positive social change, I want to define it. So what does it mean, positive social change? It is a process. It is a process that involves transforming a range of things. We need to transform thoughts, we need to transform behaviors, we need to transform social relationships, institutions. And the idea is that we are generating positive outcomes that affect individuals, communities, organizations, the environment, if we think about the natural environment as well. But most important, the benefits, they go beyond the people who are instigating the transformations. So the benefits are not only for the organizations that are initiating. So the idea of positive social change is slightly different from what we know as, it's very different, not slightly different from what we know as mainstream CSR, which is often thought with what are the benefits, what is in it for the organization, right? Here we want to think of benefits beyond the folk organization, beyond the people who are starting that activity. So positive social change is something that requires certain conditions. And the key conditions to drive social change, according to research, are motivation. So people, they need to really have a reason to change, right? Which can be an internal reason, or it can be a reason that is externally driven. They need to have the ability to change as well, right? We need to give people the skills, the confidence, the knowledge that they require to change their behaviors. And they also need the opportunities to do that. It's not just a question of their motivation and their ability. They need to have the opportunities for that. They need to have the resources. They need to have the relationships. They need to have the right environmental conditions so that they can change, right? And these three factors, motivation, ability, and opportunity, they are something that are important not only when we are thinking of the social change that we want to achieve, what is the behavior that we are trying to change, but we also can use this to think of the project level, right? How we are moving things forward inside our organization. How do we motivate the people inside the organization to join us in this project? How do we get the people with the right skill set? How do we get the knowledge that we need to carry on this project? How can we use the current structures within the organization to pursue this? What are the opportunities to pursue this social change project inside the organization? So we can adopt we can think of these conditions at different levels, right? For the focal project, and also for the broader change that we want to effect in the community or in society. Now, if we think about positive social change, what are the strategies that companies, organizations can use? So research by one of my colleagues at King's College London, Professor Ute Steffen, has identified that there are two types of strategies that are used to effect positive social change. So one type is the type that is more surface level, and the mechanisms are acting more on the surface of motivation and capabilities. They rely more on the extrinsic motivation of people. They are not so much focused on developing the capabilities of what the people that we want to change. And they rather change the decision environment around people so that they change. And here, the social impact is more temporary. It can be fast and it can be very useful. It can be a route to achieve the other type of strategy that I'm going to talk next, but it is more at the surface level. Then we have what you see above the surface level positive social change strategies. We have the deep level positive social change strategies. And they do something different with those conditions that we have seen previously. They rely on mechanisms that really promote the internal, the intrinsic motivation of people. They focus on how they can develop the capabilities of people. And rather than restructuring the environment around people so that they do what we want, we empower people, we develop their social capital. And then through these mechanisms, we see that we are able to achieve change that is more durable, more pervasive, that is more embedded in communities. And here we see change happening, but more slowly. The reach increases over time for the deep level social change. What is very interesting, if we look at this figure, is that with the surface level strategies, they do not necessarily require organizations to change much, because the practices within the organization, they do not really, they are not necessarily attached to the project. These are projects that are developed usually as bolt-on projects. They are not necessarily changing anything inside the organization on how things are done. However, for the deep level social change strategies, we do need to change existing organizations. We do need to develop organizational practices that enable and support change. And that is the challenge for the innovator working inside an existing organization. So, positive social change. So what do we see happening at the moment? Some of the trends. We see several groups of employees driving positive social change. We see, for example, Amazon employees for climate justice, really fighting for Amazon to act on climate transition, to really push their climate goals. So this is a type of action that is more based on protest and demands inside an organization. But we also see some other types of collectives emerging. So one example that I recently came across is Purpose Disruptors, which is a network of over 4,000 insiders in the advertising industry that are trying to catalyze action for the climate transition inside the advertising industry. So really joining all these advertising employees from different advertising organizations to promote this change. Another example in France now, Le Collectif, another network of citizens, employees that are trying to promote change from the bottom up, from the inside. They also very much have a focus on the climate transition. So we see several of these groups emerging, people connecting, finding these communities to promote change inside their organizations. We also see some action from the bottom up. So several organizations are really now pushing their goals for positive social change. Most prominent example are all the recent goals that have been developed around net zero emissions. So for example, AB InBev said they want to achieve net zero emissions across their value chain by 2040. Another example from MasterCard. Here, they're pledging 500 million to help close the racial wealth and opportunity gap for Black communities in America, another type of social issue. And HP, they have pledged to achieve 75% circularity for products and packaging by 2030. So the issues, the social and environmental issues, are very diverse, and corporations, they are responding to the pressure that exists at the moment for change. They are responding to some of the pressure that is also coming from their employees. But there is this gap still between intention and action, right? So how do we bridge this gap? Essentially, how can we walk this talk? It's fantastic that we have these goals, but there are several steps that we need to achieve these goals, right? So if we think back to that impact framework that I shared with you, right, what will be the inputs, the activities that will be needed so that by 2040, for example, AB InBev can reach net zero emissions across value chain? This requires innovation. This requires the input of employees. This requires really coordinated action across organizations and across people working inside and outside organizations. So the role that we explore in this module is the role of the innovator inside the organization. How can you contribute to projects that may help achieve these goals, or how can you catalyze action that enables others to create projects to pursue such goals? So I call this phenomenon corporate social entrepreneurship, which is slightly different from corporate social responsibility and some other types of entrepreneurship that we are more familiar. So if we look at this Venn diagram that I show here, corporate social entrepreneurship happens inside corporations or existing organizations, so that is the domain of action. The concern is society, which is similar to the concern of CSR and social entrepreneurship. And the process is entrepreneurship, right? It requires identifying opportunities to create new products, to create new services, to create new practices that address social problems, that address environmental problems as well. But it is this combination, this unique combination of using this entrepreneurial process, having this social concern, and doing this inside an existing organization that makes corporate social entrepreneurship so challenging. It's not the same as corporate social responsibility, because CSR often is not entrepreneurial. It's not the same as what we usually think about in terms of social venturing, social entrepreneurship, because it's happening inside an existing organization. And it's not the same as traditional corporate entrepreneurship, because there is the societal concern, right? So the combination of these three factors opens opportunities for individuals and organizations, but also creates some unique challenges. And we see this phenomenon developing in two ways in organizations. And this has been the focus of my research over the past 10 years. So we see individuals such as Gib Bullock, who used to work at Accenture, developing ideas for ventures. So in this example, he spearheaded Accenture development partnerships, which became, how does he call it, a not-for-loss venture within Accenture, where they help developing organizations. They provide consulting, which is not the standard pro bono consulting, to developing organizations. And this became a major talent attraction and retention tool for Accenture. And it also enabled them to gain knowledge in emerging markets where they were consulting for these organizations, but also helping them better achieve their development goals. So this was very much a bottom-up project, right? One individual who started this from scratch and driving that initiative from inside the organization. But we also see organizations creating programs that stimulate employees to create such initiatives. So a great example that I came across, and I have spoken to several people who have been through this program at SAP, 1 Billion Lives. So they devised this specific entrepreneurship program with the objective of helping 1 billion lives, and several ventures emerged from this initiative. So a few examples: Green Token, which has been very successful. They developed this software for tracing carbon emissions along the value chain, and another venture providing disaster relief. So we can see essentially this phenomenon emerging as what I call social entrepreneurship from the bottom up, but also in terms of incubators or corporate programs that stimulate employees to develop their ideas. So it can also be developed as a top-down strategy. So what I would like to do now is to share a little bit of some of the findings. These are emerging findings of a project that I have been leading with two colleagues at King's College London, Professor Ute Stefan and Dr. Andriana Drencheva. It's a large qualitative research project that we started 1.5 years ago. It's still ongoing. We have over 50 interviews with social entrepreneurs, and it's a project that is funded by the British Academy. So we have been very much focused on understanding the process that these innovators who are trying to do things from the bottom up, what is the process they go through? And we found that we could identify 3 pathways for doing this inside organizations. So the first pathway is what we called the entrepreneurial project leader. So this is a person who identifies an opportunity to develop a project with social goals and is really focused on realizing their personal purpose in their career. So they see this as an opportunity not only to achieve social goals, but to find that meaning they have been seeking. However, when they become successful in their projects, this can create some resentment among colleagues. So they see the project getting visibility, and then some colleagues think that this entrepreneur may not be really doing their job, and they start resenting that success. The success can also have a positive side. It can lead to a novel position for that person. So many of the entrepreneurs I spoke to, they ended up crafting these new positions for them inside organizations. But sometimes this can be a double-edged sword, because if they create an entirely new position, their career progression may become unclear. Maybe they have nowhere to go after that. So they can feel very energized and happy for creating that new position, but after a couple of years, it may become unclear what comes next, because organizations are not yet prepared for that. The second pathway that we identified is what we call the would-be entrepreneur. So this is a person, again, who identifies this opportunity to develop a project with social goals. It's also very much focused on realizing their personal purpose in their careers, but one of their key goals is to develop certain entrepreneurial skills so that they can leave the organization. So they are already thinking about the next steps. The issue with that can happen with some of these entrepreneurs is that they may not develop ideas to their full potential, because exiting the organization can become more attractive. But some of them, they do stay, and they may carry on with that side hustle, right? They continue working inside the existing organization and they carry on with the side hustle, but it can become challenging for them to manage the time. So they are trying to do their day jobs, they have the side hustle and a project inside the organization. So it can become extremely challenging to preserve their well-being. And then we also identified a third pathway, which we called the entrepreneurial enabler. And this person is different from the others in the following way. So they also seek to realize their personal purpose, but their passion is slightly different. They really care about developing their colleagues. They want to enable their colleagues to become entrepreneurs. They want to change the way their firms are approaching innovation. So we can also call them the catalysts, the people who are trying to change the culture, to change the structures inside existing organizations. One of the things they find is that they have to constantly fight against corporate short-termism because they're trying to change the structures around them. And they may suffer from seeing other frustrated colleagues leave because it's challenging to do this job. Now, how can we go from entrepreneurship to impact? So, of course, these are emerging findings that we have seen in terms of the different ways that people pursue entrepreneurship, and they are not by any means mutually exclusive. Sometimes people shift, but what we find is that to really move from these inputs and activities that they are doing inside existing organizations to impact, their main challenge is that they are pursuing these initiatives in organizations that are not fit for purpose. They are pursuing social value creation and economic value creation in organizations that are designed mainly to prioritize profit. And that is a key challenge. So one of the key things that we found that has been helping these entrepreneurs is to come together, develop a community, share their challenges, and understand how they navigate this constraining effect of being inside an existing organization to change their organizations, which need to change so that we can achieve these ambitious societal goals. So here I have a very interesting quote from a participant in the project. So even if it's hard to do this, people are seeking these projects because of their purpose, because of their mental health. So we see here, this participant shared with me that embarking on this project was really important for their mental health, not doing the same thing every day. So although it was challenging, this person did not regret doing the project. It's a crazy wild ride, a crazy journey, but this person was hoping that eventually things would align for them to pursue this idea in a more structured way inside the existing organization. So if you come along the ride with us, how would this module look? So I have created this module thinking of what I ended up calling the 7 P's of innovation for impact. So the module would start with an online component. So we would get together in an online book club. So there's a book that we would have a range of discussions before meeting in person. And in the first day that we meet, that is our first P, purpose. That's when we discuss you becoming an impact agent, all your personal motivation, your purpose. On the second day and the third day, we would move to the next 3 P's of innovation for impact. The problems, so how can we diagnose the challenges? Prognosis, how can we develop innovative solutions? The prognosis for positive social change. And on the second day specifically, we would do this with a focus on individual projects. And on the third day on organizational programs, because as I said, these initiatives can emerge from the bottom up, but it can also be driven as a corporate strategy to promote more ideas to emerge. And then in our last day, we would have the last 3 Ps, which is persuasion, power, and politics, which essentially is how do we motivate action inside the organization to push these projects forward and also to change organizational practices. And then after we meet in person, the idea is that we would have a community of innovators for impact, where we can continue to share the challenges and successes of initiatives. And this would also be linked to the assessment in the module. And here I want to share another quote from one of my interviewees that very much talks about this power of community, how important it is to find people who support you, to find the space and the people who are understanding your challenges, who are trying to solve the same challenges as you. So that is very much what I hope to achieve in this module with the community that comes together in this module. And the idea is that with the impact that we're trying to achieve, that we can move from just being isolated drops in the ocean to really think of how can we create together can create waves of change. So that is the idea behind the innovation for impact module. So I also have some useful resources to share with you that can give you food for thought after this talk. So I think Lucky is sharing the links with you in the chat. So there's the Sustainability Goals database, which can help you find goals similar to the ones I shared. The TED Talk of Dr. Miriam Sidibe, where she talks about that project that I share with you. There's a couple of books about entrepreneurship. So the first book, The Entrepreneur, is by Gib Bullock. So I talked a little bit about his initiative. So it's a very interesting read. And there's another book that has some ideas as well about how you can pursue change inside your organization, and the executive report, Driving Social Change, that has several examples of projects driving social change. So this is the end of my talk, and we are going to open soon for Q&A. But I have some prompts perhaps for a conversation. So I would also like to know about your experiences. So what social issues are important to you? Have you ever led or initiated a social innovation project inside the organization you work for, or a former employer could be as well? And what challenges have you encountered? So some questions for you. So let me exit the presentation mode and return to the Teams window.
If you have any thoughts on Elisa's questions, just pop it into the Q&A. We can also just start the Q&A session as well. So if you have any general questions for Elisa, please pop them into the Q&A and we'll start answering those.
Like, I'll rely on you to tell me, because I put on presentation mode.
Yeah, I can't see any questions yet. Maybe people are still thinking. Elisa, is there anything else, just while we're waiting, is there anything else that, you wanted to share about the module, in terms of kind of the types of speakers perhaps, or kind of assessment, that might be interesting to the audience?
Yes, so in terms of speakers, the idea would be hearing from some the entrepreneurs that have been successful with their projects, really starting from the bottom up, as I mentioned, and also from organizations that have led programs to invite ideas from employees. So it would be a mix of those. There are several examples that I have to share, especially with the research that I'm doing. So there's a number of interesting examples to share and speakers that could be joining us. And in terms of the assessment, the idea would be two types of assessment. So there is one reflexive component, really asking the participants in the module to think about how they can develop their networks, their resources, their skills to innovate for social impact. And the other assignment would be itself a project, right? So how they can propose a project that focuses on a social issue and that makes sense within the organization they work for and that they could potentially pursue. It could be focused on different stages as well of that project. If, for example, someone who joined the module has already started an initiative, but they are in a pilot stage and they're now thinking of scaling. So the project could also be thought around different stages of existing initiatives.
Great, thank you, Elisa. And I think, just from a personal perspective, I just wanted to ask you, were there any trends that you've noticed in terms of, what's worked within organizations, or, is there a certain mindset that you've noticed that kind of pushes innovation forward? Is there certain kind of organizations that it works better in? I don't know if you've noticed any trends.
So there are a number of factors that help promote these initiatives, but there isn't yet much specific research in this area. So the project that I am doing, it's more focused on the individual level rather than the corporate structures. I have a new project that I am doing at the moment, looking at different structures that can enable innovation, but it's very much at the early stages. But we know, for example, that having support from managers is important for innovating, and this is irrespective of social innovation. Being able to connect with existing corporate goals or with the mission of the organization also helps. Sometimes it is also related to the type of ownership. So, for example, one of the projects that one of my participants has been involved in is inside of a family firm, and it was very much enabled by their wish to have this legacy, this positive legacy in the community as well. So there are several factors that would be sometimes similar to what facilitates sustainability inside an existing organization, or just mainstream innovation inside an existing organization, but not yet specifically combining both, right? Because the challenge is that with innovation is the uncertainty, right? Pursuing the unknown that can be particularly hard for existing organizations.
Great. No, thank you so much, Elisa. I think we should wrap up now, if that's everything from your side.
Sure.
Perfect.
So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Let me just share the last slide.
So I can stop presenting?
Yes, I think I'm presenting now, Elisa.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say thank you everyone for joining this taster session. Elisa, thank you so much. It was really, really interesting, really insightful, and I'm sure everyone's looking forward to your module within the Executive MBA. Just a quick message about the Executive MBA. So applications are open for the program. If you have any questions, you can email us at execed-business@kcl.ac.uk. And I offer one-to-one consultations. So if you email me, we can book a consultation and I can tell you a bit more about the program and share some information about that. And then lastly, we have another exciting taster session for the EMBA, which is on the 21st of February on the economics of innovation, which is taught by Dr. Robin Klingler-Vidra. So that should also be a really exciting session. So do sign up for that and come along to that. So again, thank you so much for attending. Thank you, Elisa, and hopefully speak to you all soon.